if we don't invest in climate financing, as you saw, just breakdown of Katonga brought this country to its knees, and that's climate change. But as we talk now, Western Uganda is being hit by the drought, and the consequence of that, of course, food shortage and skyrocketing of food prices. So serious investment, and the PS will explain to the nation here why there has been a reduction in financing of climate change. From 2% first financial year to now 1%. And because Uganda is an agrarian country. So I think for me, that's one of the highlights. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not a keynote speaker, and we have experts coming here. My job as a code is to provide this environment for people to discuss freely, honestly, and frankly, and raise issues that take us forward. And on this platform, we have actually qualified privilege that we speak freely, and so that our country can move forward. So thank you for listening to me, and I look forward to fruitful deliberations. Thank you. I have been requested to invite the board chair for Uganda Debt Network, Honorable Paulo Mach, to also welcome one of our partners, Honorable Paulo Mach. Give him a round of applause.
Honorable Minister, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, with the new baptism of Paul, permit me to go straight into business. My grandson asked me, God made the heavens and the earth. Does it mean that China did the rest? I said, why? I know that in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, God made the earth and the heavens. He said, yes, everything else is made in China, made in China, made in China. So I would like to thank our investors, our people who are adding value to things in Uganda here, manufacturers, the Mulwanas. If we are discussing this issue of the budget, we should emphasize the issue of giving value to our products and manufacturing. And I'm happy on the 15th of this month, when His Excellency the President was making a summary of the budget presentation, which you did on the 15th, he said, if only we could add value to our coffee. Right now we are selling the coffee at only $2 per kilo. And if we processed it, we'd be having up to $40 per kilo. So if China, everything is being imported from China, can we ask China, every Chinese every day, to take a cup of coffee from Uganda? The second issue, Honorable Minister, is on the issue, St. Paul's letter to the Romans, chapter 13, from verse 1 to 6, which says all authority comes from God. So all the people who are elected, all the people who are in leadership now, they come from God. And he says further that they must pay taxes. So if we are talking about for God and our country, how can the revenue collection in this country remain static at 14% of GDP? We had the bishops. We had the archbishops. This country is over 80% Christians. And this is a quotation from the Bible. And even the saying in Latin that Vox Populi, Vox Dei. It's very clear. The voice of the people is the voice of God. So can we raise the level of domestic revenue to GDP from the current 13.9% to at least 18%, which the President talked about, and you also talked about it in your presentation of the budget. What is stopping us? Can we have a think tank so that we raise this and be able to reduce on deficit financing, which, Honorable Minister, you said is at 5.1% this financial year, and we intend to reduce it to 5.3%, which is still above the 3% that was given to us through the fiscal planning that we sent to Parliament. Can we deliberately reduce on deficit financing? 3, Ugandans are very, very biblical. In Genesis chapter 1, verse 28, they always emphasize the first part of it, which says, increase and populate the whole country. And indeed, Ugandans, during the COVID in particular, they never slept. The population growth rate stands at 3%, and we are among the first 5 in the whole world, the highest in the whole world. And so I am happy that, Honorable Minister, in 2014, you came out with this issue of the dividend, the demographic dividend roadmap, which I'm happy that you were able to, in the 2018, you are able to revise it. And I'm happy that this financial year, you have given a total of 9.6 billion towards the implementation of this demographic dividend. But there is a second part of it, which says, you subdue the world. You are in dominion of all the earth. And therefore, go to manufacturing. Go to issues which deals with ITs, digital transformation, so that we are able to be on top of things, rather than continuing to be in poverty, when we are given that responsibility by God to ensure that we actually subdue this world and make it the best for us. What is stopping us from doing that? Why are we concentrating on the first part of it, which is increase and multiply? And I'm sure Dr. Gobe will be telling us also from the Quran exactly what they're doing in this respect, of only taking the wrong part of the Bible and leaving the correct one. So we need to see how best we can do this, and I'm happy that in this budget, you've been able to put certain things in that direction. Number 4, Honorable Minister, the issue of debt sustainability. On the 15th of this month, His Excellency the President, when he was giving a summary, he said very, very clearly that we should either reduce or eliminate borrowing. Yes, right now we have borrowed. I don't need to go into the details because of the little time that I've been given. There are people who are going to talk about that. The level of borrowing, yes, it is still sustainable, but it is just at the periphery. So can we do something about this? The level of non-concessional loans have gone up. The level of concessional loans have come down. And the debt service is extremely high, now higher than 50% of the revenue that we are going to collect. Can we do something about this debt sustainability? Can we, as a country, come together and look also at the area of the taxes? I'm happy that in your budget you are able to mention that you are going to do something about the areas where we have given debt reliefs. Can we sit down and have a think tank where we are going to look at why should we give debt relief? I mean, to give concession to certain people, and for how long will that be, and how much are we as a country losing out of that? We'd like to look at this so that we see exactly how we can bring down the issue of the domestic deficit financing. And of course, the issue of the domestic capital formation. We have the National Social Security Fund, which now stands at 17 trillion. Can we deliberately, within the shortest time possible, move them to 25 trillion? Can we look at other areas, the Capital Markets Authority, which I believe, with some support, should be in a position to also give us some domestic capital that we can use. There is also the collective investment schemes, which up to now, remember, Honorable Minister, in 2003. That is when the law was brought out. And up to now, debt has only raised about 1.8 trillion for the whole country. Can we, if it is ready to be amended, can we go ahead and see whether this can be amended to be able to get more from this particular subvention? And of course, the public service pension scheme, can it be liberalized in such a way that it becomes contributory so that we can have a collection of domestic capital formation and we move forward as a country? And right now, Honorable Minister, through your borrowing, you are actually crowding out the private sector. The private sector right now is borrowing less than 20%, and we need them to move at least up to 30%. And this can only happen when you reduce on the amount of money that you're paying on domestic borrowing through the bonds and the treasury bills, which right now stands at 14% and is crowding out the private sector. Can we bring it down so that those private individuals that are available now borrowing from that, they can now be able to actually invest rather than taking this money to Bank of Uganda to lend to government, so that they can increase on the domestic capital formation and for us to be able to move. We are happy that this year you've been able to grow the economy by 5.5, and you are planning to move it to 6%. I believe you remember very clearly that the National Development Plan 2 planned for a minimum development of 7% for us to be able to attain the middle income status. So can we deliberately look at the areas where we can actually increase on domestic the GDP growth rate for the good of this country? I am being warned that I am left with 5 minutes, but I think since Patrick did not recognize me at the beginning, now I think he should. May God bless you all.
Thank you very much. Another round of applause. It was a strategy to recognize you so everybody's around, including the PSST. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. And maybe going ahead to manage time, let us stay within the allotted time so that we can be able to conclude this in time. So at this juncture, may I invite the Executive Director, CS BAG, Mr. Julius Mukunda, who will also, after giving us his presentation, his remarks, invite the Minister to come and speak to us.
The Honourable Minister, members of Parliament, those who are present, the PSST Minister of Finance and your team, my colleague, the Executive Director for Accord, and also the team from UDN, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the civil society fraternity in Uganda, and on my own behalf, let me thank the Minister of Finance and our partners under the Budget Transparency Initiative for concluding successfully the budget for 2023-2024. Kindly give them an applause. Honourable Minister, I think for me and the rest of our team, the level of engagement in the budget process has been unprecedented, I can tell you. Not only are we seeing requests from people who we least expected to participate, but there are so many engagements around the budget process, an indication that the other years where the spirits had dampened, we are seeing an increase in activism for everybody to engage into the budget process. And Honourable Minister, it's because of the Budget Transparency Initiative that your minister put into place so that everybody is part of this budget making process. I thank you for that. Of course, we know we have a 52.7 trillion budget, Honourable Minister. In our assessment, we have decided to say, who is going to benefit from this budget? We know that the youth, there is a 60 billion that has been allocated for skilling the youth. There is a combined total of 1.1 trillion under the circles, under the parish development model, under IMYOGA, but also there's a 1 trillion allocated to 12 government universities So we expect that the youth will definitely benefit from this budget. The budget has also not left out the private sector. I recall in one of our engagements also, some people are saying this budget lacks stimulus. A closer look, we found out that there is a 2.4 trillion allocated for private sector development. There's a 249 million allocated for promoting tourism. There's the invite grant and loan of around 218 million to export-oriented SMEs. And also we know UDB was allocated 85 billion, UDC was allocated 49 billion, and also we know that capitalization of, we know that also there are funds that were put into the microfinance support center. Still under this budget, we know the private sector were going to be given a relief on tax areas in terms of penalties and also the interest on tax areas. So we believe that's a benefit for them. The women too will get 30% of the PDM of 1 trillion, but we also know that there is money under GROW project of around 800 billion grant from the World Bank for generating growth opportunities and productivity for women enterprises. We believe that's another benefit. The budget has also not left out the politicians. They allocated themselves 945 billion, which is an increase of 30 billion from financial 2023 to 2024. Not to be left alone are the public servants too. They have 7.3 trillion Ugandan shillings, an increase of 900 billion. The budget too has taken care of the savers. We understand that Bank of Uganda intends to mobilize savings by buying bonds and treasury bills through using mobile money. So for those who have your 10K, please get prepared. We hope that the bank can be able to roll out this initiative and also begin to save by buying bonds and treasury bills. So with all these opportunities, what does it take then? Because these are opportunities. What does it take for these opportunities to be realized? First of all is fiscal discipline. We want to see that you tame domestic arrears, because if you don't pay back the suppliers, then we shall be stifling the private sector. We want to see reduction in supplementary budgeting, because that's part of fiscal discipline. It distorts the budget process. We are happy that you are reducing domestic borrowing from 5 trillion to 3 trillion. We would have loved to see that the figure that was put in the national budget framework paper of 1.5 trillion would have been maintained. But we look forward also that you continue reducing domestic borrowing. For us to realize these opportunities, we must have a robust monetary policy system. This is something sometimes we take for granted. We are glad that the inflation continues to go down. Our exchange rate is very stable, but also that our Bank of Uganda is being recapitalized, because anybody thinking that our bank is a bit shaky, then they can be able to speculate into the market and they can destabilize our prices here in this country. So we need that to be maintained and even to do better. We want you to fix leakages and corruption, especially areas of the payroll. As you are aware, we have serious issues in the payroll. People are overpaid, underpaid, and also paid at different grades. We are glad that the audit is taking place, and we look forward for the results. However, we want to ensure that those who are prosecuted for corruption, that their cases can be handled on time and justice is delivered. Another point is, please, let's keep on citizens' participation in holding public servants accountable. These events, and more others to come in our regions, is a demonstration that we can participate in our budget process. But at the same time, is that we want to see more information about the budget on a quarterly basis, continue to flow in, so that we can be able to hold our civil servants and politicians accountable. Lastly, is that all this can be realized if we reach the target of our domestic resource mobilization. We know URA has been given an uphill task. I have told it so many of my colleagues. I am yet to see an institution as best performing as Uganda Revenue Authority. If you look at their performance, is 98% throughout all the years. Even during COVID, these guys managed to collect more than the previous year. And if your child comes home with 98% performance, I can assure you, you will slaughter a chicken for him or her. So we would like to see them being supported more so that every person where they are, they can pay their fair share of taxes, especially those that are not in taxation bracket. We would like them to be included in taxation bracket. In conclusion, therefore, we would like to commend you for openly engaging with us in this budget process. I call upon my fellow Ugandans, please, the budget that has been made is not for the politicians or the technocrats. It's for me and you. That borehole, that health center, that school, none of our politicians will ever use them. But for me and you, we are the ones who shall be using them for good and my country. Thank you so much. May I therefore take this opportunity to invite the PSST to come, the minister, the Honorable Minister, to come and give us a keynote address. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, my friend Julius Mukunda. My colleagues, members of parliament, and also Honorable Fredo March, the former Minister of State for General Duties and former MP, who mentored me in my founding years of parliament. I think that one is important. People should clap for it. The PSST and our staff from the Ministry of Finance, Your Excellencies, the ambassadors, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon to you all. I am going to speak after Julius has spoken, and he has said that the boreholes we do are not for us, the politicians. I've just returned from my constituency, and all of the projects we do, some of us are not Kampala MPs. We come from the villages, and we benefit from these services we take to the people. If anything, the MPs are part of the people, so I don't agree with you when you say these services are not for us. We are part of the people we represent. But let me take this opportunity to thank you, the organizers, for inviting me to officiate at this event. And this is not the first time I'm doing it. Even last year, I officiated at this event. Therefore, I want to thank you, the organizers, for making me your strategic partner in this. The budget for financial year 2023-24 is premised on full monetization of Uganda's economy through commercial agriculture, industrialization, expanding and broadening services, digital transformation, and market access. Let me now give you some facts, good facts about the economy. which were also clearly brought out in the budget speech. One is that our economy has gained momentum and is estimated to have grown by 5.5% relative to 4.6 in the previous year. This growth from the highs of 10.7 recorded in October 2022. As a result, prices of essential commodities such as sugar, soap, fuel have tremendously decreased. When prices increase, people complain that the government is not doing certain things. When prices go down, government is not thanked for doing certain things. But this is the environment we work in. But I would pray that the public, when things go well, then NRM government should be thanked for steadily managing. And I want to thank you, the stakeholders, and our team at the Ministry of Finance, and the President of Uganda for remaining steadfast when this challenge of escalating prices came. There were certain things which some of you were proposing us that we do, but we said no, that these proposals cannot lead us where we want to be. And I'm happy that now we are in this room when the prices have gone down and those things were not done. Give us some. Thank you. Relatedly, total credit to the private sector increased by 4.8% from Uganda shillings 19.5 trillion in May 2022 to Uganda shillings 20.5 trillion in April 2023. Despite the high costs of credit, although trade and personal lending account for the large share of the growth, key sectors including industry and agriculture have also contributed to the growth in lending. It is also imperative to note that Uganda shilling has remained stable against major global currencies due to increase in foreign direct investment inflows into the oil and gas sector, significant recovery in tourism, and the recent good performance of exports. In view of the above, Uganda's merchandise exports expanded by 35.5% in the 12 months to US dollars 4.2 billion in April 2023, compared to 3.1 billion in April 2022. This has been attributed to increase in exports of gold, coffee, fish, sugar, beans, maize, and light manufactured products to the regional markets. On the other hand, Uganda's import bill over the same period widened to US dollars 7.1 billion in April 2023, relative to US dollars 5.8 billion in April 2022, due to a rise in private sector imports, particularly in the oil and gas sector, plant and machinery for manufacturing, and imported inflation. Foreign direct investment inflows to Uganda amounted to US dollars 1.5 billion by April 2023, while remittances increased to US dollars 1.3 billion in 2022 from 1.1 billion US dollars in 2021. These financing sources not only complement government's resources, but also aid in funding our foreign exchange requirements, including imports and debt service. In terms of employment, the size of the working age population stands at 23.5 million people as per the National Labor Force Survey 2022. Of the labor force, 10 million were employed, translating into an employment rate of 88%. In addition, 8.2 million were engaged in subsistence agriculture, while 9 out of every 10 employed Ugandans were working in the informal sector. It is imperative to note that about 380 employment opportunities have been created under the Presidential Initiative on Wealth and Job Creation, EMYOGA. We project that Uganda's economy will grow at 6% in financial year 2023-24 and an average rate of 6.57% per year over the next 5 years. It is against this background that moving forward, government is putting in place priorities and strategies to enable key stakeholders achieve their respective visions. To further boost economic recovery, government will focus on the following. One is increase domestic revenue mobilization and reduce non-concessional borrowing to ensure debt sustainability. Two is effectively implement the parish development model and the EMYOGA initiatives and provide affordable credit for micro and small enterprises and low-income groups through the Small-Scale Business Recovery Fund, EMYOGA, the Microfinance Support Center, and Uganda Development Bank for medium and large enterprises. Number 4 is effectively implement the various export strategies and boost access to global and regional markets. Number 5, construct the standard gauge railway and rehabilitate the meter gauge railway, maintain and tarmac the Maram roads, invest in industrial parks and energy transmission line, develop oil and gas production, specifically the construction of the East African crude oil pipeline and the national oil refinery, and implement the Greater Kampala Metropolitan Infrastructure Development Market Plan. In terms of production and productivity, government will provide quality seedlings, pesticides, fertilizers, storage, and marketing in the agro-industrialization value chain, develop small-scale solar-powered irrigation schemes to address climate change and ensure food security, and mitigate the adverse effects of climate change on the economy and livelihoods. In terms of skills, government will increase the skilled labor force to match the demand of the diversified economy, especially industrial parks, and we cannot do all this without maintaining peace and security of persons and property. In terms of addressing some of the issues which were highlighted, government will implement a number of strategies which include the following. One is reduce domestic borrowing, which is the major driver of commercial bank lending rates, in order to crowd in the private sector. The strategy is to limit domestic borrowing to an average of 2.2% of GDP in the short to medium term, and mobilize external concessional loans and utilize non-concessional loans for projects with high economic and financial returns. In terms of financing strategies, we shall implement the parish development model and the Myoga initiatives to boost household incomes as well as develop micro-enterprises. And we shall also enhance revenue collection, rationalization of public expenditure, and ensuring long-term debt sustainability. This includes effective implementation of the domestic revenue mobilization strategy. In terms of boosting agriculture, we shall support agricultural research for the development of climate-resilient crops and animal species, construct small and medium and large-scale irrigation schemes in water-stressed areas, among others. In terms of budget efficiency, government will repurpose the national budget to achieve high multiplier effect of government interventions on the economy and improve the efficiency and effectiveness of the government programs and projects. And lastly, government will reduce the budget deficit to the maximum limit of 5% of GDP and gradually reach the ESC target of the deficit of 3% of GDP. The budget deficit is expected to reduce to 3.5% of GDP in financial year 2023-2024. In conclusion, therefore, our main objective is to raise domestic revenue and maximize the available resources for concessional borrowing while minimizing domestic borrowing with a view of improving the business environment for the private sector to continue taking lead in growing the economy and contributing to domestic revenue mobilization. We call upon the development partners to continue supporting our development agenda. We invite the private sector players to exploit the investment opportunities identified in the budget. To the civil society, we look forward to working with you in improving budget transparency and effectiveness. I want to take this opportunity to thank you so much for listening to me. A number of issues which were raised have been addressed in my talking notes, and if I have left anything, the PSST will speak to it. I want to take this opportunity to once again appreciate Dr. Arthur and your team for your good partnership with the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, and always ensuring that the last mile person understands what is in the budget for them. Thank you so much for listening to me once again.
give the Honorable Minister another round of applause. Thank you very much, sir. Honorable Minister, also amongst us here, let me recognize the presence of Mr. Evans Jemba from the Eco Opportunities Commission, Ali Tagole, Assistant Commissioner, recognize you, Apole Muginde, Principal Communications Officer, Ministry of Finance. Thank you so much for being here. May I, at this juncture, invite Mr. Ramadan Gobi, Permanent Secretary, Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, to give us the keynote address, Economic Recovery, Resilience for Inclusive Growth, Opportunities, Priorities and Strategies. Please, let's welcome him with a round of applause.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Honorable Minister of State for General Duties, who is also Acting Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, Honorable Members of Parliament present, Your Excellencies, Ambassadors and High Commissioners, all senior government officials, the executive directors of Accord, CSBAG, Uganda Debt Network, and NBS, our partners in this conversation, members of academia, all members of civil society, the private sector, the people who make the money that runs this economy, including the old man, Andrew Mwenda, and all other members of our community, fellow Ugandans. This is the fourth time now I'm talking about the budget and talking about what my minister presented last week. So I'm going to be brief. The good thing, civil society in Uganda is also as evolving as the economy and also as government. It's very positive. We are now talking about opportunities. We are talking about the various options that we could be having and the strategies we can use. That is fantastic, and I'm very glad to hear that. So I thank you very much, our co-organizers of this high-level policy dialogue, and I'm happy that we have moved this journey together to make the budget understood by the average Ugandan in the context that they should understand it. Not in so many ways I hear some people discussing it in a selective way. As the Honorable Minister presented last week, this budget, I'm going to summarize the key things. Number one, Honorable Minister told us next year, the national budget of Uganda is mainly intended to achieve one major goal: to redirect resources from all those areas where resources have been in the national budget towards wealth creation by facilitating more Ugandans to join the money economy. That is the major goal of this national budget. His Excellency the President has guided us. This term is a term for wealth creation. It's not a term for anything else. How do we get Ugandans who are outside the money economy join the money economy? That's the budget we are talking about. This budget, which intends to accelerate our goal, which I've mentioned, has the following priorities. Number one, effective implementation of the parish development model. We would want to see this journey, which we started last year when the term started. This year, when we started the allocation of resources, next year is for serious business. Getting Ugandans at every parish level to be able to access resources and use them for wealth creation. We have had this idea for a long time. How do we get wealth creation in the hands of people? We have done procurements at government to buy inputs and technologies to send them to people through Operation Wealth Creation. It has had some impact. We are saying now, let every Ugandan become the procurement officer of themselves. The government should just facilitate them. That's the first major priority. The second priority, which the Honorable Minister has also talked about here, upgrading the transport infrastructure. We want to reduce the cost of transporting goods and services. That's why we are now commencing the construction of the standard gauge railway next financial year. It's a priority of government. Why? Because Uganda is a landlocked country. We must not be debating anymore on whether we should have a functional railway line from Mombasa to Kampala and beyond. We need transport means, especially for our cargo, that are competitive. For your information, the Kampala-Mombasa route is the second most expensive route in the world. The only other route which is more expensive than it is connecting Niger and the hinterland, there in West Africa. This one, Mombasa-Kampala, is the second most expensive route because we are still using the road transport, which is very expensive. We want also to, because the standard gauge will not be developed in 1 year or 2 years, it is going to be some number of years, we want to have a stopgap measure. Because somebody may wonder, are we wasting resources rehabilitating the meter gauge when we are shifting to the standard gauge? We are rehabilitating it as a stopgap measure. So we are putting in upwards of $100 million to rehabilitate that meter gauge. We are now going to the wing of Tororo Guru up to Pakwach, but also it will be later moved to standard gauge. We are also stepping up road maintenance because we have put up enough kilometers of tarmac, but they are not well maintained. On top of that, the roads, the Maram roads which join the villages where Ugandans are growing things, connecting them to the tarmac, are in bad condition. Next year is a year of maintaining them. Here in the greater Kampala metropolitan area, where the economy is hosted, about 2/3 of the economy, we have very poor infrastructure. We are going to overhaul it beginning next year. The third major priority is promoting small-scale solar-powered irrigation so that we can adapt ourselves to climate change. I've had Mr. Dr. Arthur Mugisha saying that the money for climate finance is reduced. Actually, we are giving it more money. There are more money in this budget. I'm going to show you where that money is so that perhaps we can be able to know exactly which type of budget we are talking about. I'm going to show you. Supporting science-based research and development is another priority. so that we can kickstart a knowledge-based economy. So when you see more money going to scientists who are engaged in innovations, what we call STI, it's a top priority of government. We are also continuing our support and stepping it up for private sector to access affordable and patient capital, as the Honorable Minister and also Mr. Mukunda told you here. The Honorable Minister told you we have nearly, in that budget, 2.7 trillion shillings now to try and distort our credit markets. The commercial interest rates are so high for us to industrialize. And yet our agenda now is to industrialize this country. You can't develop a country by digging so much. You can only develop a country by adding value, by industrializing, by creating factory jobs. That's what at least has been the journey of most of the economies we admire. So I don't want to bore you by repeating the numbers there, but we have huge investment to support that area. We are also having a priority of developing infrastructure in industrial area, industrial parks. We set up industrial parks, but they don't have infrastructure to facilitate the investors. Transport infrastructure, electricity, water, ICT, other infrastructure. So Namamve, if you go there, you will see that there is now good activity there by Lagan Dot. When you go to Mbale, we are going to start. There was a delay. NEC, our own company, is now working with our private investors to develop infrastructure in Mbale Park and Kapeka. Kapeka is the fastest growing industrial park in East African region. The fastest growing. We have also a priority of investing in oil and gas to start our production on schedule. We have fully capitalized UNOC as government. We are now working on supporting them to also access debt. There is a debt component. Each of the companies in the oil value chain must contribute. And the UNOC has our 100% support. And I want to tell you, the oil schedule, the timetable to getting our first oil in 2025 is on track. I know in the past, we've said oil will come this year and it shifts. Another year and it shifts. Now, we are very serious with this one. Okay? We are also prioritizing investment in tourism promotion and development to market Uganda. We have listened to the voices of the people of Uganda. I've been seeing my friends Amos Wekesa and so many others. We have our very good leader, Lily, in a Uganda Tourism Board. We've had a series of meetings and engagements. I want to tell you now, when you talk to them privately, they are happy with what we are now doing as government. At least the role of government is quite clear now. And we have put in the resources, and we are going to support further. The only little debate I know, which is still remaining, is what exactly does each of us have to play? Which role? The role of private sector and vis-a-vis the role of government. Because whenever we bring resources, then somebody tells me, like last year, we fought so much. My minister is there. He's the one who presented the paper to cabinet. It was a big fight. We got the money for for UTB. Then later, private sector was telling me, you are putting the money in the wrong place. Don't put money in UTB. I said, now, what should government do? I would want that clarity, by the way, the tourism fraternity. As far as resources are concerned, you can see what we have done as government for the, especially transport infrastructure in those tourism areas. Myself, I've been there, I know. You now drive on brand, elephants are running on tarmac. They don't like it, but it is there now. So, and also empowered the IT. When you are in the deep of the deep positions, areas of, for example, Queen Elizabeth, everywhere you are, you can update people at home. Internet is everywhere, in the park. This is what we need to invest in as government. We now want to work on those areas because they need some infrastructure. And that's where we are heading, but also marketing Uganda. We want that clarity on who should play which role. Now, we have also continued to invest in ICT development, ICT, so that younger people can do jigs without much, trouble. Younger people, just to provide them with infrastructure, give them internet, which is reliable. They will create their own value. And that's what we are now doing as government, extending the bandwidth and also trying to get internet to the richest, to rich areas of Uganda. We have a new project under NITAU and the Ministry of ICT, which are coordinating, working with other stakeholders in the private sector so that we can extend ICT. We have also prioritized human capital development. I prefer to call it investing in people. This budget has invested heavily in Ugandans. Education, healthcare, water for human consumption. It has the lion's share of the budget. 9.5 trillion shillings in there. Social spending is our priority next financial year. Mobilization of revenue. I prefer to call it collection of revenue because the word mobilization does not exist in the purview of economics. Next year, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to collect more revenue. Uganda Revenue Authority is under strict instructions and supervision to aggressively collect revenue. How? By ensuring that we reduce leakages, by avoiding those things we have been facing in the past. A number of people are not paying the tax, their fair share of the tax they should pay. They either avoid it or evade it through under-declarations, through falsification of documents, and so on and so forth. We have invested further in this very budget in URA to ensure that they effectively administer our tax laws and tax measures. We are not, as we told you, introducing new taxes. We are mainly enforcing the measures that we have. And they told you the numbers. We are targeting nearly 30 trillion shillings of domestic revenue. About 27 trillion tax and about 3 trillion or nearly there, non-tax revenue. All of that I've mentioned is going to be anchored on continued investment in security. It's a priority of this budget. We already invested in security. We want to continue to support our security officers, the men and women, in security uniforms, who keep us safe. Just the other day I was talking here about security, that some of us had started to take it for granted. That's why you heard people questioning security budget. But you know you can't achieve other things when you don't have security. I have disagreements with our partners and so on. I was in the Treasury Department of the United States and just this year, and I was having a good conversation with the Honorable Minister and the Attorney General and our hosts. And they were saying, Uganda, you are having a substantial investment in security. Why? I told them it's because everywhere is different. In Uganda, we have a history. In Uganda, we have a geography. We are, located in a hotbed of insecurity. Hardly a few days ago, you saw what happened to our children. So when you say, no, cut security budget and put the money, build more schools, you need to balance these two. And we are doing exactly that. Now, Mr. Mukunda had already helped me to outline the opportunities in this budget. Apart from those he outlined, a budget is not only about money, allocating money. A budget is also about the policy mix. I want to tell you our policy mix is an opportunity for Ugandans. The policy mix is a right one. We are very minimal on distortion in Uganda. We don't distort the markets. We don't distort the markets for reasons well known that distortional economics creates more problems than solutions. Our economics also, which informed the budget planning, was economics based on a choice between alternatives. And the trade-offs were very well thought out, the trade-offs. We have taken a decision, for example, to cut spending, what we call deficit spending. In this very budget, there is a huge reduction in deficit spending. 2 years ago, our deficit, what we call fiscal deficit, was 7.4% of GDP. Next year, we are targeting 3.5% of GDP. You will go around this region and all the developing world. If you could find a country which has managed to cut the deficit spending to that level, let's compare notes. These are some of the things I would want us to have a conversation on. So this is a trade-off, and it is, as you know, it is a Keynesian idea to guide the market economy. Whenever government is cutting deficit spending, it's a signal to the markets that government is pulling out of certain spaces, take advantage of those spaces. And that's what it means. Already have been emphasized. We are targeting to recover back to our target growth rate of 6%. We are targeting a GDP of $55 billion. The president is not happy with these numbers you had. He doesn't want us to grow by only $5 billion. That's the target we are having now. We must work hard, and we have already assigned ourselves this trouble in the ministry to address the issues of acceleration of growth. It has happened in East Asia, But you know it is a combination of factors which we should discuss. How do we accelerate growth? What did, for example, you can read a book, How Asia Developed. You will find that a combination of factors there. It's a debate for another day, which I'm going to arrange. I'm going to arrange a debate, and I will request His Excellency the President, we have this national debate on how we should transform this economy. What are the factors that we must address as a country? The trade-offs that we must make. But for next year, $55 billion. We are targeting a per capita GDP of $1,182. Per capita GDP, not per capita GNI. We are targeting revenue, as I told you, of 29.7 trillion. That is 27.4 trillion tax and 2.3 billion non-tax. And that would bring a tax GDP ratio of 14.3%. Remember our optimal level of tax GDP ratio, which would make us get to a level where our borrowing everybody is talking about is forgotten, is about 18%. If we could tax about 18% of our GDP, we shall be near a level where deficit financing, or rather deficit budgeting, will be much lower. We are targeting a debt to GDP ratio of 48.2%. 48.2%. What are the strategies? And I conclude, for us to achieve those things. In this budget, you will find that we've repurposed the budget. We've repurposed the national budget the way we used to know it. This journey started last year, in 2021-22. We have reduced travel abroad. It's now restricted to only critical travels for revenue mobilization, for critical statutory trips. The head of state must make trips somewhere. The Speaker of Parliament and some parliamentarians must make a trip. For example, they have a parliament called Pan-African Parliament. They can't hold it in Uganda. They hold it somewhere. Those are statutory. The Chief Justice has to go somewhere, and a number of judges. Some foreign affairs officials must go to New York or wherever. They can't do certain things on Zoom. Those are the travels you'll find in the budget. This budget for travel abroad, to give you context, has reduced from 241 billion shillings in 2021-22 to 92 billion today. That also is still large, but we couldn't repurpose beyond that without distorting certain things. Next year, we are not buying cars for public officials and politicians. We froze car purchase, except for revenue, for security, because there are some security automobiles you must buy, for ambulances, and for items like tractors and motorcycles for our extension workers. Those are the only people who are going to buy vehicles. All these public officials, you are going to drive the car that you have. Those who don't have a car, wait for the future. We are also having very few workshops next year in the budget. Somebody called me and said they were discussing the budget on one of the programs over the weekend, I think Capital Gang. And they were saying, these people are just talking. These things are in the budget. They did cut them. Please, facts are facts. They are there. The only workshops you will find in the budget are those which are hosted by those entities whose mandate is actually to workshop. There are some institutions of government whose mandate is made in such a way that they must workshop. For example, Parliament. Now, that plenary you see when members sit in Parliament to debate, in our chart of accounts is called a workshop. So when you see workshop, don't say, Ramadan lied to us. Do you want to stop plenary from sitting or cabinet from sitting? Those are the only things. And a few other meetings of Ali and his budget, because he has to ask people around. This one here is a workshop. And you have seen finance is a partner. So when you see some little money we have contributed there, because we want to engage the public in a conversation, but not these workshops of going to discuss problems we already know. Those ones, we have stopped them. We have frozen creation of administrative units. They are not there in the budget. We have frozen salary enhancement. We can't afford next year. We told the people we don't have money for more salaries. You can wait for some time. We have cut retooling to the bare minimum. Retooling is government offices buying computers, buying tables. We are saying that table you have, if one leg has gone off, get a carpenter. You can use some of the office small money you have and you fix the leg, but no new furniture. Now, when I hear some people talking there, these people just talking, they're not doing anything. These are realities. I can give you all of the numbers of what it means. Now, in 2021-22, when we started the repurposing exercise, we realized 1.7 trillion shillings from those things I'm talking about. 1.7 trillion. Where did we spend it? 1.1 trillion went to parish development model. So the PDM has been funded from repurposing of the budget. We haven't borrowed a coin. We got 580 billion and we gave it to scientists to enhance them, to create more innovations, like a COVIDX. We want more of the type going forward. The head of state was asking, I saw his tweet, why is COVIDX not yet pronounced either fine or not effective? Those are not my questions to answer. We have provided resources for ensuring that scientists can work. The balance of that money went for human capital development. That's why the human capital budget has been protected. We reimbursed the money which had been repurposed from them. So going forward, ladies and gentlemen, we have learned to live within our means. We are learning this in government. I shouldn't say we have learned, we are learning as government to live in our means. We are reducing government expenditure. We have started to term what we call a budget incrementalism, a tendency where each entity in government expected a higher budget every other passing year. That one we are terming it. Now, the winners in the budget have started to gain by taking from the losers. Somebody else must lose the money for another one to get it. This is intended to reduce borrowing. It's what was causing domestic borrowing to rise every year. We need your support to ensure that these reforms are effective. We are cutting supplementary budgets. These ones have reduced. Last year, we had a supplementary budget of 6.3 trillion. This year, we are going to end with half of that. Hopefully next year, a quarter. And like that, we go to, but some people want it from there. You know, they are natural movements of things. In economics, they are curves, not straight lines. They are not linear aspects. So, but I want to tell you, we are restoring fiscal discipline in government. We have also learned to mobilize more revenue, to collect more tax revenue without levying new taxes. I've emphasized that again and again. So let me conclude. The fiscal outlook, fellow Ugandans, remain quite positive for us. The economy is recovering because it has been very resilient despite the shocks which we have faced. The government is committed to collecting more revenue. Government is committed to reducing borrowing, particularly domestic borrowing, because it is very expensive and distortionary. We are also having the oil and gas activities at the front of our minds, not the back. Here, the front. And we are not relenting in supporting the extraction of our oil resources to boost recovery and transformation. In the next 4 years to the oil, we are expecting an investment of $6.75 billion by the oil companies. This is a total of 25 trillion shillings coming into our economy. The past 3 years, as you know, have been very, very difficult years, but going forward, we are seeing positive outlook. The goal is to make the economy to work for every Ugandan, as Mr. Mukunda told you. In that budget, I would like you to identify opportunity for everybody, because it is there. There is an opportunity for a farmer, for a trader, for a street vendor, for a worker, an employee. You say, I'm an employee. What's your occupation? Employee. There is an opportunity there. An industrialist, a banker, a borrower, a professional service provider. There is opportunity for a civil servant. There is an opportunity for medical personnel, including interns. Interns, I see them on Twitter and on TV. I think they are not quite very well informed. The minister, the Honorable Minister, informed them that in the next few weeks, government is going to sort out their fate of living in suspense on whether they will be supported or not. Please be patient. When the government gives you a commitment, be patient. Don't sound entitled. Of course you are, but just a few weeks and we sort it out. We promised to pay the arrears. We have paid them. We have issued, myself, I signed the cash limit to the Ministry of Health just last week to pay the 20-something billion shillings. We are now working on going forward. Those new interns, how do we facilitate them in a more sustainable way? So that, because you know, there are also challenges, the numbers, and so on and so forth. That's the conversation we are going to have in a few weeks, a couple of weeks before the financial year starts, with the Ministry of Health and so on. So I thank you. Please, politicians, don't think we have forgotten you. You are in the budget. The elderly, you are in the budget. Women, you are in the budget. The youth, Mr. Mukunda showed you, you are in the budget. So I would expect that as the panel starts discussing this budget, you know, in economics, they say, good questions outrank easy answers. Perhaps let's ask more good questions than providing easy answers. I thank you very much.
Give our PSST another round of applause. I can see in your keynote address you've given us hope. I can see you're talking about a government that's going to be frugal. I can see you are super focused on collecting more. I can see you want to appropriate resources strategically, and I can see you want more people, 39%, to come into the money economy, which I think is a good thing. Though I'm sure some challenges remain, and that's why we have a panel that will be discussing a little more and going deeper. Ladies and gentlemen, may I now invite Professor Augustus Nwagaba, Managing Consultant, Reeve Consults International, for discussion of the keynote address. Professor Nwagaba, sir. This activity has been allotted 10 minutes, sir.
The Honorable Minister of Finance, my brother Henry, and my brother Ramadan, distinguished guests, let me go Nigerian way, ladies and gentlemen. We are very glad to be here for this discussion. And we have had quite a number of discussions on this very matter. Now, I'm going to be very brief so that we can have a discussion. And I will focus my analysis on three major areas. One will be debt. The second will be how to finance government expenditure. And then the last one will be, I'll give you a little bit of what other countries do, because I have advantage of working in quite a number of them. Now, debt, the big elephant in the room is actually debt. The entire budget process in Uganda, as you can see from Permanent Secretary ST, is really debt. All governments have debts. The British government, recently, one of them had to fall within 42 days. And the Minister for Finance was a graduate of Cambridge, was a graduate of Harvard, as you all know. He was at Eton. Eton is the equivalent of King's College, I think, here. When I was in London, I think he was in the Commonwealth Department at that time. The father was a very serious economist. And he really surprised us. Having grown in a family of very serious economists, having gone at Cambridge and Harvard. So these things are not familiar as therefore you can see. He comes, the British government becomes exchequer, runs the government, the budget for UK is 1.5 trillion pounds. And they now run a debt of 10% of that. And what was it? Was for fuel. They wanted to curb this fuel crisis, and just of course by the supply chains, the global supply chains for petrol and diesel. And here we advised the government. We were in Serena, just I think in this room, and we said the government should not. We all agreed, and you all quarreled. I think government should be able to bring this fuel down and so on. Uganda, in case you didn't know, we use 6 million liters of petrol and diesel in 24 hours. So supposing you told the President Museveni even to put 10 shillings down just to inject a subsidy of 10 shillings times 6 million liters on each liter, Where will government get that money? I would like to congratulate the government and the Minister of Finance and ourselves for having refused this process. You have passed through that problem, but it has been a very good problem. So management of debt, this is what I'm talking about. Management of fiscal deficit is something that is not easy. The big animal here is debt, but the problem is, and the Minister of Finance is here, you need to answer 3 questions. One is, all of us have debts at home, I've already told you. Put up your hand if you don't have a debt. We would congratulate you. We would congratulate you as the best hero in the world. And sometimes also as the best stupid hero also in the world. Because all people who have made money, we make money, all of us, by borrowing. We use other people's money. But we answer 3 questions. 1, why do you borrow? Why do you borrow? Question 2, where do you get money? Question 3, do you have capacity to pay that debt? Now, question 1, where do you borrow? Government is very good news, is reducing on concessional loans. But I would like to advise my brother Ramadan, you are here, is that you could have had also innovations. We have got some innovations where we could, Karuma Dam was put up about 1.7, went about to 2.2 billion, 600 megawatts. Now, I was in Addis, Renaissance Dam, I was also in Tanzania, in April. Renaissance Dam, it is 6 gigahertz, 6,000 megawatts, about 4 billion. How was this money raised? Put up your hand if you know that this reconnaissance dam was constructed on borrowed money. Never. The money, the dam was listed on the stock exchange. So every grandmother, even my grandmother in Ethiopia, has a share in this dam. As a result, the cost is low. Ethiopia has the lowest cost of electricity. And actually, Dangote has put there one of the biggest cement factory in Tororo. It's in Tororo now. in Addis. Can you have a Tororo now on the cost of this electricity, which is very, very high? I was in London. I was in Amsterdam. I was everywhere before COVID-19 2019. And UN had told me to map where your brothers and sisters, what they are doing in diaspora. So I went to our brother Moto. I went at Trafalgar, at our embassy, discussed with Ambassador Moto. I went to Amsterdam. Those who understand London very well. I was at Piccadilly, trying to map areas, Manchester, also Money You Fund. I was very happy to be at Old Trafford. I even forged in actually Piccadilly because I just wanted to be at Old Trafford in the evening to watch a football match. I think it was our Manchester and Liverpool. I discovered that what should have been done, for example, let us be very practical. If we put Housing Finance Bank at Trafalgar, at Piccadilly, at Reading, because this is the road from London, Reading to southwest to Exeter, Piccadilly, East Coast trains from Emirates, we would have had points where we could marshal this money. The only country in Africa which has done that successfully is Nigeria. We have to congratulate Nigeria. It is the only country in 55 countries which have a diaspora bond. When I came here, I was able to map the total money is $1.6 billion. This is what I told the United Nations in my report. Then I discovered the Karuma Dam is actually also 1.7 billion, which went a little bit high because of the transmission now. So what does this mean? We could easily have put up Karuma Dam without going to Exim Bank and this in hydro. We would have done that. Ethiopia did that, and Ethiopia is also trying to have this diaspora bond. The problem with it, why Ethiopia has not succeeded, is you have to list it on New York Stock Exchange in smaller denominations. And that's what they really need to do, and they are there. So we need to find new innovations. Because if you continue having, you can say you are improving administration. But already the money we are getting from URA is very little. Please understand this. It's only 60% of the money we need. 52.7 minus 30. Actually, it's not even 30, it's 29.7. Be very specific, it's about 59.4% of the total budget we need. Then you look at taxation itself. The taxation itself, it is very, very stringent. I pay corporation tax, but in my company, the corporation tax, I'm also a consultant. So I also earn. So they gain tax, my income tax also 30%. Remember, they are taxing the corporation tax, but I also get money from profits, which pay 30%, and also I'm paid. The company pays me, they also need another 30%. Mauritius has the lowest, Rabbi continue bring in other countries. Mauritius has the lowest cost of doing business in Africa. Singapore has the lowest in the world. Singapore also has the best public service commission. Best public service in the world is in Singapore. Those who are Rotarians, we are going to be in Singapore in next May. That's why we have an international conference. I want to bring to your attention what Singapore has done. Is to make cost of doing business low. If you understand economics very well, then broaden tax base. Get people who are many paying little tax. In this case, you have a very large basket of taxpayers. But if you continue taxing with these multiple tax, VAT 18%, corporation 30%, income tax 30%, withholding 6%, even if you tell me you are going to be a portfolio investor, with the investment in bonds, 10, investment in treasury bills, 20. And then America has reduced interest rates from 1 to 4.5. Where are you going to get now portfolio investors? When that happens, what will happen now on our domestic currency, on the value of domestic currency? As Kaseja has been saying. So you need to know how economies work, so how other economies have worked. There has not been any magic, no witchcraft. These are deliberate strategies. So what am I talking about? You need to know where you are going to get cheapest money. Cheapest money is, you all know if you are investors. Cheapest money is in equities. It's in shares. What Americans call stocks. British is shares. So once you have that strong term, how are you going to have concessional, Julius? Without thinking, I've been seeing people here investing in malls. You invest in a very long-term investment from short-term sources. What a contradiction. That's why we are going to buy their malls, put up a mall. 4 billion, we shall come and buy it at 200 million. Because you didn't know where to get money. Then do you have capacity to pay? You don't have capacity to pay. You are telling me America's GDP currently is 22.4 trillion. As we have seen from Minister of Finance, it's going to be 55 billion. US GDP is 22.4 trillion. But their debt is 31. So Biden is quarreling with the Congress, and they are going to increase it. Why? And all of us are praying that the Congress will accept. Because we cannot afford to have American economy defaulting failure to pay, which is likely to be the case. Yeah, they are using fiat money. This is just fiat money. Money whose authority just comes from government authority, not money which we had as gold. As a gold standard, where now the gold standard was money which was equivalent to the gold that the country has, the value that the country has. America is now at the verge of very, very serious trouble. They are going under what we call de-dollarization, which Nixon in 1971 said no, instead of continuing to have our money tied on this gold, because they were borrowing a lot. Say now let's have fiat money. They started printing. They didn't know now where to borrow, no capacity to pay. This is not good. Please borrow. All of us are borrowing, but put up apartments by your own money, like the government is doing. After, put tenants, tenants will pay, and then you manage the loan. That's how we all manage ourselves. But you want to get money from the bank to pay salaries, pay another district which is being created at your own individual, and you have been blaming government when you are doing the same thing. Then start buying land, then you reach in the middle, you don't know what to do with the other land. You start building, you don't know how you are doing beam, everything has stored. What kind of stupidity is this? People borrow to complete. There is an economic theory we call, it's a very neoclassical, it's very old. development is initiated from within. But as a professor, you can add. Professor, we are allowed to add on somebody's statement. Even if the book is published, you can only prepare from outside. So propulsion is from outside, ignition inside. Ignition is never outside, neither can propulsion come from inside. This is what we are doing. Now, on revenue collection, therefore, government is going to, according to this budget, is going to increase on the tax administration. I'm very happy the budget is talking about, the minister talking about, for the first time, I think, in these recent years, control of production, which is irrigation. I was very happy with that. Because what brings our inflation high, apart from importation, this inflation from the global supply chains, disruption is global supply chains, and then the war in Ukraine. But the war in Ukraine came when inflation was already high. Why? Because of petrol and diesel. If we can control production, which I'm very happy with this 2.2 trillion on climate, irrigation, and managing, in economics we call them supply side constraints, things we cannot control, drought, then you can control our production. Our inflation is largely headline inflation, which is food prices that are volatile, and petrol and diesel, which I've already told you, you guys, you know how to guzzle petrol and diesel, 6 million liters a day. It's chaos. Then we could reduce on food inflation. Of course, we have nothing to do with oil unless we start producing ours and manage it well. Then you can reduce inflation. Now, lastly, on human capital development, what we did to government is that when we developed the National Development Plan, of which I was the lead consultant in this NDP 3, we changed government operations. We said instead of this silo way of doing things, the Minister of Education, the Minister of Rural Government, the Minister of Water, Minister of Agriculture, talks to Dr. Kalisti, we said we don't now want the Minister of Water and Minister of Agriculture. We said let's have one program, agro-industrialization. It's program number 1 in our NDP 3. Human capital development, health, education, and so on. And our main emphasis was to ensure that we can stop silo thinking, because we have been arguing with the government. The Maputo Declaration is saying 10% of the budget to agriculture. But you have been quarreling with the government that agriculture has never received even 4%, which is true when you read the budget. The Minister of Agriculture, the agriculture sector, has never received anywhere in this recent budget of 10 years and before, more than 4%. But then the government will argue that, don't you know, Professor? And this is what has been my discussion with the Minister of Finance. When we make a road and construct a road, Kampala to Kisoro, that road is used by people agriculture taking their commodities. Okay, we said, okay, let's stop silo thinking and silo operational procedures and do program planning and budgeting. Our government, Uganda government, is currently on program planning and budgeting. That's why you see human capital development getting 18% of the budget. That is education, health, and this is a very big achievement. All countries, all countries, whether you're talking about the emerging economies, the highly developed countries, these poor countries, no country has ever developed without investing in people, in the people. Talk about Japan. Talk about the US, the best economy in the world. China, second economy in the world. Japan, third. Germany, fourth economy in the world, and the best in Europe. And for information, even under the Euro crisis, it is the only country which never had a problem with Germany. The reason why Germany is under recession now is only one thing, single thing, because of the Ukraine-Russia war. Since they get over 60% of their oil from this just pipeline from Putin. Other than that, don't joke with Germany. Why? Germany's education and human capital is, thank you, 1 minute, is such that they really invest in education and technical training. I'm just finishing. South Korea is investing in education and training. So I'm very glad, Minister Henry, for government to think about human capital development, particularly investing in science. China has got what we call, what you should have done continually is dual qualification framework, introduction of dual qualification framework. Instead of paying teachers' salaries only as one strategy, we should do what we call dual qualification framework, where if I'm an economist, I should also be able to do these lights here. These ones here in a series. This circuit diagram is in a series. I should be able to have this series. When we are building our houses, the people who earn more, you all know it, are people who come as electrical what? Engineers. These are the ones who earn the highest. That's why China is. A student in China, a pupil in China who has finished P4 is able to produce. They're the ones making these circuits diagrams in your phones and so on and so on. In South Korea, this is Samsung, who is not having a Samsung product here. Minor change technology. These are people who invested in science and technology much, much earlier. And they are able to balance. South Korea now is one of the 10 largest economies in the world, the 10 largest donors here. So I'm very happy for government to have seen this investment in science, but we should continue with the dual qualification framework so that we teach people the way we teach our doctors here in Mulago. That's how China teaches everyone. If you see our doctors, MB, CHB, the way we teach medicine, for them they get 2 degrees. The way we teach economics in different curve never meets another one. Those who are economists. And I saw Quantica and always have that tangent, that line. That's the way we teach medicine. The only difference is that we have now MB, then we have CHB, which is now clerkships on the ward and surgeries. That's the only difference. And that's how China is. So we need to improve teaching so that we have human capital development. We put money in creating skills such that you have now a holistic human being. And when this boy or girl stops at P7, S4, S6, university, tertiary training, then you are able to have